Chapter 9. The fickle wind's my foe, with tide his keen ally. They're jealous of my sea's love, and rouse her with their lie. O sweet sea, O dear sea, heed not their stormy wile, but bear me safely to my hold, and from their watery trial. Eastern Sea Hold Song. There was an excitement in the air of the dining hall, the boys chattering more loudly than ever, a conventional buzz that dropped off only slightly when they were seated and the heavy platters of steaming meat slices were brought around. She sat with Ranley, Peemer, and Timony, who all urged her to eat hearty, for they'd be lucky to get stale bread for supper. "Sylvina counts on us stuffing ourselves on our own marks at the gather," Peemer told Manoli, as he crammed meat into his mouth. He groaned as she heaped tubers on his plate. "I hate 'em." "You're lucky to have 'em. They were treats where I came from." "Then you have mine." He was generosity itself, but she made him eat his own. No one spent time over the meal, and the diners were dismissed as soon as Rudigan had called out the list of names. "Well, I'm not on turn today," said Peemer, with the air of a last-minute reprieve. "Turn?" "Yeah, being Harper Hall and all, this hold expects continuous music, but no one does more than one set, either singing or dance music. No great problem. You know, Manoli, you better tell your fire lizards to stay away," Peemer said as they made their way across the courtyard to the archway. The other boys nodded in agreement. "No telling what ragtag is going to appear to gather." He sounded darkly foreboding. "Who'd hurt a fire lizard?" Manoli asked, surprised. "Not hurt 'em, just want 'em." Manoli looked up and saw her friends sunning on the window ledges. As if her notice was sufficient, Beauty and Rocky came streaking down to her, chirping inquiringly. "Couldn't I just take Beauty? No one sees her when she hides in my hair." Peemer shook his head slowly from side to side. The other boys mimicked him with earnest expressions of concern. "We," and he meant Harper's, "know about you and having 9. There's some dimwits coming today who wouldn't understand. And you're wearing an apprentice badge. Apprentices don't know nothing or count for anything. They're the lowest of the low and have to obey any journeyman or master or even a senior apprentice in any other craft. Shells, you know how Beauty acts when someone tries to rank you? You can't have Beauty taking a swipe at an honorable journeyman or craftmaster, now can you? Or someone from the hold?" He jerked his thumb toward the cliffside as he dropped his voice to keep the mere possibility of such discourtesy from exalted ears. That would get Master Robinson in trouble? Considering the gossip work already done at the hold, Manoli would as soon remain anonymous to them. "It could." Ranley and Timony nodded in solemn accord. "How do you manage to stay out of trouble, Peemer?" Manoli asked. "'Cause I watch my step at a gather. One thing to cut up in the hall when it's all Harper's, but—" "Hey, Peemer!" They all turned and saw Brawley and another apprentice whom Manoli did not know running toward them. Brawley had a brightly painted tambourine, and the other a handsomely polished tenor pipe. "Thought we might have missed you, Peemer," the boy gasped. "Here's my pipe, and Master Durant stamped it in Brawley's tambourine. Will you take him to the marksman now?" "Sure, and he's my father's friend, Pergamol, like I told you it would be." Peemer took charge of the instruments, and with a quirk of a smile at Manoli, led the way toward the loosely arranged stalls on the perimeter of the gather's square. For the first time, Manoli realized how many people lived in this hold area. She would have liked to watch a bit on the sidelines to get used to such a throng of people, but grabbing her hand, Peemer led her right into their midst. "What's up?"
"There's a bug on the door."
"I don't care. It's just a bug. It's not gonna hurt anything." She nearly piled into Peemer when he came to a sudden complete stop in the space between two booths. He glanced warningly over his shoulder, and Manoli noticed that he had the instruments behind his back as he composed his face into an expression of wistful ingenuousness. A tanner journeyman was bargaining with the well-dressed marksman in the stall, his smithcraft badge gleaming with a gold thread in the design. "See, it's Pergamol," Peemer said out of the side of his mouth. "Now you lot go on, across there to the nightstand until I'm finished. Men don't like a lot of hangers-on when they're when they're agreeing the mark. No, Manoli, you can stay." Peemer snatched her back by the jerkin as she obediently started to follow the others. Although Manoli could see Pergamol's lips moving, she heard nothing of his speech and only the occasional murmur from the bargaining journeyman. The smithcraft marksman continually stroked the finely tanned warehide as he dickered, almost as if he hoped to find some flaw in the hide so he could argue a further reduction. The hide was a lovely blue, like a summer sky when the air is clear and the sun setting. "Probably dyed to order," Pemer whispered to her. "Selling it direct, neither has to pay turnover fee. With us, once Duran has stamped the instrument, the marksman doesn't have to say it was apprentice-made. So we get a better price not selling at the Harper booth where they have to say who made it." Now Manoli could appreciate Pemer's strategy. The bargain was hand-sealed, and Mark slipped across the counter. The blue hide was carefully folded and put away in a travel bag. Pemer waited until the journeyman had chatted, as courtesy required, and then he skipped to the front of the stall before anyone else could intervene. "Back so soon, young rascal. Well, let's have a look at what you've brought. Stamped as you said." Pergamol examined more than the stamp on the tambourine, Manoli noticed, and the smith-crafter's eyes slid to hers as he pinged the stretched hide of the tambourine with his finger and raised his eyebrows at the sweet-sounding tinkle of the tiny cymbals under the rim. "So how much were you looking to receive for it?" 4 marks, said Pemer, with the attitude that he was being eminently reasonable. 4 marks? Pergamol feigned astonishment, and the interchange of bargaining began in earnest. Manoli was delighted, and more than a little impressed by Pemer's shrewdness when the final figure of 3.5 marks was hand-clasped. Pemer had pointed out that for a journeyman-made tambourine, 4 marks was not unreasonable. Pergamol did not have to say who made it, and he saved a 30-second on turnover. Pergamol replied that he had the carriage of the tambourine. Pemer discounted that since Pergamol might very well sell the item here at the Gather, since he could price it under the Harpercraft stall. Pergamol replied that he had to make more than a few splinters profit for his journey, his effort and the rent of the stall from the Lord Holder. Pemer suggested that he consider the fine polish on the wood, listen again to the sweet jingle of the best quality metal, thinly hammered, just the sort of an instrument for a lady to use, and a hide tanned evenly, no rough patches or stains. Manoli realized that for all the extreme seriousness with which the two dickered, it was a game played according to certain rules, which Pemer must have learned at his foster mother's knee. The bargaining for the pipe went more smartly since Pergamol had noticed a pair of small holders waiting discreetly beyond the stall. But the bargaining was done and hand-sealed, Pemer shaking his head at Pergamol's stinginess and sighing mightily as he pocketed the marks. Looking so dejected that Manoli was concerned, the boy motioned for her to follow him to the spot where the others waited. Halfway there, Pemer let out a sigh of relief, and his face broke into the broadest of happy grins. His step took on a jauntier bounce, and his shoulders straightened. "Told you I could get a fair deal out of Pergamol." "You did?" Manoli was confused. "Sure did. 3.5 for a tambourine, and 3 for the pipe? That's top mark." The boys crowded round him, and Pemer recounted his success with many winks and chuckles. For his efforts, he got a quarter of a mark from each of the boys, telling Manoli that that was an improvement. For them, on the full half mark, the Harpercraft all charged for selling. "Come on, Manoli, let's gad about," Pemer said, grabbing her by the arm and tugging her back into the stream of slowly moving people. "I can smell the pies from here," he said when he had eluded the others. "All we have to do is follow our noses." "Pies?" Master Robinson had mentioned bubbling pies. "I don't mind treating you since today is your first gather. Here," he added hastily, looking to see if he'd offended her, "but I'm not buying for those bottomless pits. We just finished dinner. Bargaining's hungry work." He licked his lips in anticipation. "And I feel like something sweet, bubbling hot with berry juice. Just you wait, we'll duck through here." He maneuvered her through the crowd, going across the moving traffic in an oblique line until they reached a wide break in the square. There they could see down to the river and the meadow where the traders' beasts were grazing hobbled. People were moving up all the roads, arriving from the outlying plain and mountain holds. Their dress tunics and shirts made bright accents to the fresh green of the spring fields. The sun shone brilliantly over all. It was a glorious day, thought Manoli, a marvelous day for a gather. Pemer grabbed her hand, pulling her faster. "They can't have sold all the pies," she said, laughing. "No, but they'll get cold, and I like 'em hot, bubbling." And so the confections were, carried from an oven in the baker's hold on a thick, long-handled tray, the berry juices spilling darkly over the sides of the delicately brown crust that glistened with crystallized sweet. You're out early, are you, Pemer? Let me see your marks first." Pemer, with a show of great reluctance, dragged out a 30-second bit and showed it to the skeptic. "That'll buy you 6 pies." "6? Is that all?" Pemer's face reflected utter despair. "This is all me and my dorm mates could raise." His voice went up in a piteous note. "Don't give me that old wheeze, Pemer," said the baker with a derisive snort. "You know you eat 'em all yourself. You wouldn't treat your mates to so much as a sniff." "Master Master Palom. Master me nothing, Pemer. You know my rank, same as I know yours. It's 6 pies for the 32nd, or stop wasting my time. The journeyman, for that was the badge on his tunic, was slipping 6 pies off the tray as he spoke. Who's your long friend here? That dorm mate you're always talking about? She's Manoli. Manoli? The baker looked up in surprise. The girl who wrote the song about the fire lizards? A 7th pie was set beside the others. Manoli fumbled in her pocket for her 2-mark piece. Have a pie for welcome, Manoli. And any time you have a spare egg that needs a warm home. He let the sentence peter out and gave her a broad wink and a broader smile so she'd know he was joking. Manoli? Pemer grabbed her wrist, staring at the 2-marker, his eyes round with surprise. Where'd you get that? Master Robinson gave it to me this morning. He said I'm to buy a belt and some bubbly pies. So please, journeyman, I'd like to pay for them. No way! Pemer was flatly indignant, knocking her extended hand away. I said it was my treat because this is your first gather, and I know that's the first mark piece you've ever had. Don't you go wasting it on me. He half turned from the baker and was giving Manoli a one-eyed wink. Pemer, I don't know what I'd have done without you these past few days, she said, trying to move him out of her way so she could give Palom the marker. I insist. Not a chance, Manoli. I keep my word. Then put your money where your mouth is, Pemer, said Palom. You're blocking my counter. And he indicated the hulking figure of Camo bearing down on them. Camo! Where you been, Camo? Cried Pemer. We looked all over for you before we started for the pies. Here's yours, Camo. Pies? And Camo came forward, huge hands outstretched, his thick lips moist. He wore a fresh tunic. His face was shining clean, and his straggling crop of hair had been brushed flat. He had evidently honed in on the sweet aroma of the pies as easily as Pemer. Yes, bubbly pies, just like I promised you, Camo. Pemer passed him 2 pies. Well, now you wasn't having me on, was you, about feeding your mates? Although, how come Manoli and Camo? Here's your money, said Pemer with some haughtiness, thrusting the 32nd piece in Palom's hand. I trust your pies will live up to the standard. Manoli gaped, because there were now 9 small bubbly pies on the counter front. 3 for you, Camo. Pemer handed him a 3rd. Now don't burn your mouth. 3 for you, Manoli. And the pastry was warm enough to sting Manoli's scarred palm. And 3 for me. Thank you, Palom. It's good of you to be generous. I'll make sure everyone knows your pies. And despite the heat of the crust, Pemer bit deeply into the pastry, the dark purple juices dribbling down his chin, are just as good as ever. And he said the last on a sigh of contentment. Then, more briskly, come on, you two. He waved to the baker, who stared after them before he uttered a bark of laughter. See you later, Palom. We got 9 pies for the price of 6, she said, when they'd got far enough away from the stall. Sure, and I'll get 9 again when I go back, because he'll think I'm sharing with you and Camo again. That's the best deal I've pulled on him yet. You mean, pretty smart of you to flash that 2-marker about. He wouldn't have been able to change it this early in the afternoon. I'll have to try that angle again next gather. The large marker, I mean. Pemer! Manoli was appalled at his duplicity. His expression over the rim of the pie was unperturbed. Good, aren't they? Yes, but you're outrageous. The way you bargain. What's wrong with it? Everyone has fun, especially this early in the season. Later on they get bored, and even being small and looking sorrowful doesn't help me. Ah, Camo. And Pemer looked disgusted. Can't you even eat clean? Pie's good! Camo had stuffed all 3 pies into his mouth. His tunic was now stained with berry juices. His face was flecked with pastry and berry skins, and his fist had smeared a purple streak across one cheek. Manoli, will you look at him? He'll disgrace the hall. You can't take your eyes off him a moment. Come here. Pemer dragged Camo to the back of the lines of stalls until he found a water skin dangling from a thong on a stall frame. He made Camo cup his hands and wash his face. Manoli found a scrap of cloth, not too dirty, and they managed to remove the worst of the pie stains from Camo's face and front. Oh, blast the shell and sear the skin, said Pemer in a round oath as he took up his 3rd pie. It's cold! Camo, you're more trouble than you're worth sometimes. Camo trouble? The man's face fell into deep, sorrowful lines. Camo cold? No, the pie's cold. Oh, never mind. I like you, Camo. You're my friend. Pemer patted the man's arm reassuringly, and Camo brightened. Cold or not, Manoli said, after she took a bite from her third and cooled pastry. They're every bit as good as you said, Peemer. Say, and Peemer eyed her through narrowed lids, maybe you'd better bargain the next lot out of Palem. I couldn't eat another. Oh, not now. Later. It'll be my treat then. Sure thing, he agreed with such amiability that Manoli decided that she'd taken the bait, hook and all. First, he went on, let's find the tanner's stall. He took her by the hand and Camo by the sleeve and hauled them down the row. So you're really Master Robinton's apprentice? Wow, wait till I tell the others. I told him you would be. I don't understand you. Peemer shot her a startled look. He did say that you were his apprentice when he gave you that 2 marker, didn't he? He's told me I was before today, but I didn't think that was unusual. Aren't all the apprentices in the hall his apprentices? He's the Master Harper. You sure don't understand. Peemer's glance was one of undiluted pity for her denseness. Every master has a few special apprentices. I'm Master Schonager's. That's why I'm always running his errands. I don't know how they did it in your Seahold, but here you get taken in as a general apprentice. If you turn out to be specially good at something, like me at voice and Brawley at making instruments, the master of that craft takes you on as his special apprentice, and you report to him for extra training and duties. And if he's pleased with you, he'll give you the odd mark to spend at a gather. So, if Master Robinton gave you a 2 marker, he's pleased with you, and you're his special apprentice. He doesn't tap many. Peemer shook his head slowly from side to side with a soft, emphatic whistle. There's been a lot of heavy betting in the dorm as to who he'd pick since Sibel took his walker's journeyman. Not that Sibel doesn't still look to the Master Harper, even if he is a rank up, but Ranley was so sure he'd be tapped. Is that why Ranley doesn't like me? Peemer dismissed that with a gesture. Ranley never had a chance, and the only one who didn't know that was Ranley. He thinks he's so good. Everyone else knew that Master Robinton was hoping to find you, the one who'd written those songs. Look, there's the tanner's stall, and just by that beautiful blue belt, it's even got a fire lizard for a buckle tongue. He pulled her up and lowered his voice for the last words. And blue! You let me bargain here? Before she could agree, Peemer approached the stall, acting casually, glancing over the tabards, soft shoes and boots displayed, apparently oblivious to the belt he'd just indicated to Manoli. They've got some blue boot hide, Manoli, he said to her. Knowing the shrewdness Peemer had already displayed, Manoli followed his cue, and glancing at the tanner for permission, touched the thick, wary leather. She could see the belt over his shoulders, and the tongue had been fashioned like a slim fire lizard. Now don't tell me you have money in your trousers, short stuff, the tanner journeyman said to Peemer, and then peered uncertainly at Manoli's cropped hair, trousers, and apprentice badge. Me? No, but she's buying. Her slippers are a disgrace. The tanner did look down, and Manoli wanted to hide her scuffed footwear. This is Manoli, Peemer went on, blithely unaware of the embarrassment he was causing her. She's got 9 fire lizards, and she's Master Robinton's new apprentice. Wondering what on earth was possessing Peemer, she glanced anywhere but at the curious journeyman. She caught a glimpse of bright filmy materials and richly decorated tunics. She steadied her gaze and saw Pona, her arm through a tall lad's. He was wearing the yellow of Fort Hold and the shoulder knot of the Lord Holder's family. Behind Pona came Briala, Amania, and Adiva, each of the girls escorted by a well-dressed youth, fosterlings of Lord Grohees to judge by the different hold colors and rank knots. Here, Manoli, what do you think of this hide? Asked Peemer. And be sure she has the marks for it, said Pona, pausing. Her voice was too smooth to be insulting, and yet her manner gave words an offensive ring. For I'm certain she's only wasting your time and will finger your wares dirty. Whereas I want to commission you to make me some soft shoes for the summer. She held up a well-filled waist pouch. She's got 2 marks, Peemer said, turning to challenge Pona, his eyes flashing with anger. If she does, she stole it, replied Pona, abandoning her indolent manner. She'd nothing on her when she was still permitted to live in the cot. Stolen? Manoli felt herself tensing with fury at the totally unexpected accusation. Stolen nothing, Peemer replied hotly. Master Robinton gave it to her this morning. I claim insult from you, Pona, cried Manoli, her hand on her belt knife. Venus, she's threatening me, Pona cried, clinging to her escort's arm. Now see here, apprentice girl, you can't insult a lady of the Holders. You just hand over that mark piece, said Beanish, gesturing peremptorily to Manoli. Manoli, don't take insult. Adiva pushed her way past the others and grabbed her arm, restraining her. It's what she wants. Pona's given me too many insults, Adiva. Manoli, you mustn't. Get the mark, Venus, Pona said in a hiss. Make her pay for threatening me. Out of the way, Venus, whoever you are, said Manoli. Pona has to answer for the insults she gives, lady holder or not. Manoli moved sideways, countering Pona's attempt to evade her. Venus, she's dangerous, I told you so. Pona's voice went up in a frightened, breathless squeak. You mustn't, Manoli, Adiva said, catching Manoli's sleeve. She wants you to. Pemer, help me. Don't you dare, Adiva. Pona's voice was now edged with angry malice. Or I'll settle you good as well. Come, girl, the money. Hand it over and we'll say no more about attempted insult, said Venus in a patronizing tone. Pona's insulted Manoli, cried Pemer indignantly, just because you're a... Close your mouth! Venus wasted no courtesies on Pemer. He took a stride to close the distance between himself and Manoli, his jaw set in a disagreeable grin as he disdainfully measured the three slight and defiant adversaries. Pona gave a little squeal as Venus left her standing on her own. Then another as Manoli, stepping away from Venus, made a lunge at her, trying to catch her long plaited hair. Hey, now just a minute, you, said the tanner in a loud voice, sensing an imminent fight. He ducked under the counter of his stall, emerging into the walkway. This is a gather, not a... Venus was quick on his feet, too, and he grabbed Manoli by the shoulder, spinning her towards him and securing her left arm, which he immediately twisted up behind her. With a cry of triumph, Pona darted forward, her hands busy with Manoli's belt pouch. Pemer sprang to Manoli's assistance, kicking Venus in the shins and grabbing Pona by the hair. The kick made Venus loosen his hold on Manoli's arm. With a strength developed by turns of hauling and handling heavy nets, she wrenched free of his grasp, dancing out of his way. I'll settle Pona, she shouted to Pemer, beckoning him away. Venus, save me! Pona screamed, rushing to the young holder, but Pemer was still hanging onto her plate. Venus let fly a kick at Pemer, tripping him up and added another one to the ribs as the boy measured his length in the dust. Leave him alone! Forgetting her quarrel with Pona, Manoli launched herself at Venus. Putting shoulder and body behind her fist, she drove it right into Venus's face. He staggered back, roaring in outrage and pain. One of the other fosterlings came charging forward, fist cocked to slam Manoli, but Adiva hung onto his arm. Vidarian, Manoli's a sea holder! Help us! Startled, her escort bounded in to help Adiva, just as Manoli ducked under Venus's swing and tried to protect Pemer, who was struggling to get to his feet, blood streaming from his nose. The next moment, the air was full of shrieking, clawing, fighting fire lizards. Pemer was screaming that Venus better not hit the Harper's apprentice or there'd be real trouble. Kama was howling that his pretty ones were afraid, and he waded in, thick arms flailing, hitting indiscriminately at friend and foe. Manoli got a cloud across the ear as she tried to restrain the misguided Camo. Shells! It's the Hall's dummy! Scatter! Get her! Knock him down! Got her, Manoli! The fire lizards were not hampered by Camo's inability to distinguish friend and foe. They went for Pona, Briala, Amania, Venus, and the other lads. Manoli, trying to catch her breath, realized that things were completely out of hand and desperately tried to call off the fire lizards. The girls were scattering, screaming, vainly trying to cover their heads, hair, and eyes. Attacked from above, so did the fosterlings. Be still, everyone! The bellow was stentorian enough to penetrate, shriek, howl, and battle cries,
Hey, Mom.
and stern enough to command instant obedience. What's up?
I ripped some of the paint off of this and I need to get it off the couch. Can I have the hand vacuum?
Not while I'm reading, because it will make a very loud noise. Also, I have to find my ring before you vacuum the couch, because I don't want it accidentally getting vacuumed up. You there, hang on to Camo. Douse him with that skin of water. You, Tanner, help them with Camo. Sit on him, knock his feet out from under him if necessary. Manoli, control your fire lizards. This is a gather, not a brawl. The Harper strode into the midst of the melee, yanking a fosterling to his feet, spinning one of the girls into the arms of the folk who had converged on the scene, giving a bloody-nosed Pemer a hand up from the dust. The Master Harper's actions were somewhat hampered by the distressed squeals of the little bronze fire lizard clinging tightly to his left arm, but there was little doubt of the Master's fury. A silence broken by the gulping sobs of Pona and Briala held attackers, attacked and witnesses alike. "Now," said the harper, his voice controlled, although his eyes were flashing with anger, "just what has been going on here?" "It was her!" Pona staggered a step toward Master Robinson, jabbing her finger at Manoli and struggling to control her sobs. Long scratches marred her cheeks. Her headscarf was torn and her hair pulled from its plaits. "She's always causing trouble." "Sir, we were minding our own business," said Peemer indignantly, "which was buying a belt that you said Manoli ought to have, when Pony here, that little sneak, tripped me as we were passing, and then her hideous beasts attack all of us. They've done it before. I have witnesses." She stopped mid-gulp, arrested by the look on the harper's face. "Lady Pona," he said in an all too gentle voice, "you are overwrought. Briala, take the child back to Dunca. The excitement of a gather appears to be too much for such a fragile spirit. Amania, I think you ought to help Briala." Though his voice expressed concern for their well-being, it was obvious that the harper was disciplining the three girls who bore evidence of the unfriendly attentions of the fire lizards. Now he turned to the old fosterlings. Venus, his left eye already bruising, his lip cut, his hair tousled and forehead bearing the fire lizard marks, was straightening his tunic and brushing dust from his sleeves and trousers. The other youths who had been escorting the now banished girls maintained the rigid stance they had adopted as soon as they'd recognized the Master Harper. "Lord Venus?" "Master Harper." Venus continued to adjust his garments, awarding the briefest of glances to the harper. "I'm glad you know my rank," said Robinson, smiling slightly. Manoli had been soothing Beauty and Rocky, who had refused to leave when she sent the others away. At his tone, she looked at the harper, amazed that he could express so profound a reprimand with a brief phrase and a smile. One of the other fosterlings jabbed Venus in the ribs, and the young man looked angrily about. "I expect you have business elsewhere." "Now," said the Master Harper. "Business? This is a gather day." "Sir, for others, indeed, it is, but not, I think, for you." And the Master Harper indicated with his hand that Venus had better retire. "Or you, and you, and you," he added, indicating the other fosterlings, who displayed claw marks. "Will you occupy yourselves quietly in your quarters, or will I have to mention this to Lord Grohe?" He accepted the frantic shakings of their heads. Then he turned his back on them and pleasantly indicated to those who were avidly observing his summary justice that they should now continue their interrupted pursuits. He walked to where Camo was still being restrained by three large journeymen, blubbering noisily about his pretties being hurt, and struggling to free himself. "The pretties are not hurt, Camo. Not hurt. See, Manoli has the pretties." The harper's voice soothed the wretched man as he gestured for Manoli to come forward into Camo's line of sight. "Pretties not hurt?" "No, Camo." "Broodigan, who else is about?" The harper asked his journeyman. Several other harpers obediently moved against the tide of the dispersing crowd. Camo had better go back to the hall. "Here," and the harper reached into his pouch and passed Broodigan a mark piece. "Buy him a lot of those bubbly pies on your way back. That'll help settle him." The crowd had melted away. The Master Harper, stroking his gradually quieting fire lizard, turned back to the small group still clustered together. He gestured them to the unoccupied space between the nearest stalls. "Now let me hear the sequence of events, please," he said, but his voice no longer held the chilling note of displeasure. "It wasn't Manoli's fault," said Peemer, batting at Audiva's hands as she tried to staunch the flow from his nose with the berry-stained cloth used earlier on Camo. "We were looking at belts." He turned to the tanner for confirmation. "I don't know about belts, Master Robinson, but they weren't causing any trouble. When the blonde girl, Lady Pona, started pulling rank on your apprentice, made a nasty accusation about the girl having money she oughtn't to have." A look of dismay crossed the harper's face. "You didn't lose the mark in the fuss, did you, Manoli?" He scuffed around the trampled area with his boot toe. "I don't have many 2-mark pieces, you know." The tanner stifled a bark of laughter, and the harper sighed with almost comic relief as Manoli solemnly displayed the cause of the trouble. "That's a mercy," Master Robinson said with a smile of approval from Manoli. "Go on," he added to the tanner. "Then this lass," and the tanner gestured toward Audiva, "took Manoli's part. So did the young sea-holder. I think all would have come to nothing if Camo hadn't got upset, and the next thing I know the air's full of fire lizards. Are they all hers?" He jerked his thumb at Manoli. "Yes," said the harper, "a fact that ought to be borne in mind, since they do seem able to recognize Manoli's, Sir, I didn't call them, Manoli said, finding her voice. I'm sure you didn't need to. He closed his hand reassuringly on her shoulder. Master Robinson, Pona bears a grudge against Manoli, said Godiva in a rush, as if she could make the admission before she changed her mind. And she's got no real cause at all. Thank you, Godiva. I've been aware of the prejudice. The harper made a slight bow, acknowledging the tall girl's loyalty. The Lady Pona will not trouble you further, Manoli. Nor you, Godiva, he continued, that hint of implacability tinging an otherwise pleasant tone. Good of you, Lord Vidarian, to support another sea-holder, though it is a loyalty I would prefer to render unnecessary. My father, Master Robinson, is very much of your mind, which is why I am fostered in a land-bound hold, said Vidarian with a respectful bow. He stiffened, his eyes widening at some disturbing sight. He swallowed hard, anxiety plainly written on his face. Ah, said the harper, having followed the direction of Vidarian's gaze. I wondered how long it would take Lord Grohe to respond to promptings. He grinned, highly amused at some inner reflection. Vidarian, do make off with Godiva, now, and enjoy yourselves.